everyone, we're here for Hull Women's Week this week, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to some incredible women. And today I'm here with the Right Reverend Alison White. Alison, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Alison has been Bishop of Hull from 2015 to actually just a week ago. She retired just 1 week ago tomorrow. So very, very recent. But before we talk about any of that, Alison, the first thing that I'm really interested in is, for you, when did you realise that your calling was the church?
Oh, Chrissie, what a good question.
Big question.
It is a good question. Do you know, if I'm really honest, I've struggled with the shape of my calling being in the church. I was extremely resistant to that.
Okay.
The deep call for me is, I really believe that each of us can make a difference. So the question for me was, so how can I make a difference? And I was really off God, off church for a lot of years. And it was in my early 20s, first half of my 20s, I just got that feeling of, oh my giddy aunt, you know, there's something more is being asked of me.
Yeah.
If I want to make a difference, what kind of shape could that take? And so this was back in I'm quite old. You've just said I'm retired now. So that was back in the 70s. And at that time, women in the Church of England were not visible, really not visible, in terms of leadership and being up front. So there was I didn't have any kind of role models, and I was just trying to find my way back into church. So it wasn't obvious to me that the calling would be, as you put it, to the church. The call for me is, I want to see the way God dreams the world. I want to see that come to pass. And the church, in its different forms, I mean, the Church of England's only one way of doing it. The church really does play a part in that. So in the end, too long a story to tell you, but in the end, that is where I hung my hat up. Yeah.
I'm really interested when you say it was a realization in your 20s. Was it a slow, gradual realization, or was it the kind of classic thunderbolt kind of moment?
No, I'm a thunderbolt-free zone. No thunderbolts. No thunderbolts. For me, it was a kind of just putting the pieces together, seeing how the colours melded together, and they began to make a picture. That I would be probably more how I would think about it. You know, so as I grew in connecting up with God, I think I just began to see, that could be real for everybody, because that's how we're wired, I think. Yeah. And how can we be community together? And one of the great things about church in all its forms, at its best, it is fabulous at being community and being in community.
Yeah. So where are you from, Alison?
Oh, Chrissie, what a question. So I was born in Liverpool. I know I don't sound like I'm from anywhere, but I was born in Liverpool. Both sides of my family from Liverpool. My dad's work took us down to London when I was about 7, 8. Right. So I did growing up in school in London, and then when I went to university, I went up to Durham.
Yay!
And yes, and I don't know how you'd explain this, but I just felt like I'd come home in the Northeast. There's no logical reason for it, but I think there's a deep grounding in all of us that we know where our home place is, and that isn't always where we were born. So I went up when I was 18 up to Durham and basically stayed up there and stayed and stayed and stayed and love it. And I'm about to go back up, or at least up to Northumberland.
So Alison and I were having a chat just before we started the recording, because I'm from Durham, which is why I got very excited when Alison said Durham. And we were just having a chat about our experiences there. But for me, I mean, one of the most beautiful, probably actually one of my favourite places in the world is Durham Cathedral. It's such a, and I can't explain that feeling of, it's just such a special, beautiful, you kind of walk in and you're just like, there's just history. It sounds like such a silly thing to say, but the kind of weight of history and the beauty of it, I just think it's the most spiritually beautiful place.
Chrissie, I completely agree with you. And I think it's all that you say, but I also think it's a place, if this doesn't sound fanciful, where heaven and earth touch each other. And it doesn't matter what, where each of us hangs our hat up. Walking into those spaces, sometimes they're in buildings, sometimes it's in the big wide world, but we just kind of know we've connected. And I think Durham Cathedral is one of those places. I was ordained there.
Oh, wow. Wow. One of my proudest moments is at secondary school, when at the Christmas carol service for Durham Johnson School, when I was chosen to stand and read. So I got up there in front of everybody and I read this passage, and my parents were there to see me, and it was a really proud moment, and it felt just really, really special. And like we talked about, my dad's passed away since, but whenever I go back to Durham, I light a candle for him at the cathedral, and I always just spend a few minutes thinking, because it's just such a beautiful space where you just can take time and reflect.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So we like Durham very much.
We do, and we like Northumberland as well.
Yes, which is where you are moving to. It's your dream of kind of going back to Northumberland, isn't it?
It is. My husband's a Geordie, and so it's his part of the world. And I, as I said, I felt kind of just like my roots were somehow there.
Yeah.
So we've got lots of family and friends up there, so off we go.
Fab. And the best bookshop in the world on your doorstep with Barter Books.
Yes,
I love it. Indeed. There. Brilliant. Well, you obviously, Alison, I've been reading about you and we've spoken. So, I mean, you've got a long list of things you've achieved and successes, but I wanted to talk to you kind of what key successes would you pick out? What things are you most proud of in your career to date?
What an interesting question. I don't know that being proud or thinking of what I've offered as being success. I think I'd say for myself, Chrissie, and maybe this will connect with people who pick up on this conversation. I think what we are is to be ourselves and to offer what we can offer. And if that's good and helpful, then hooray. And if it isn't, well, that's how it is. But I think, so how would I answer you? I think I feel immensely privileged, and that's a slightly different take on it, because I'm a kind of relic in the Church of England, in that when I first went into public ministry, that was in 1986, and women couldn't technically be ordained at that point. The Church of England has to go through Parliament, and at that stage the legislation hadn't been passed. But then the very next year in 87 it was. So I was ordained as a deacon. Then there was a massive wait. This is all technical. It's not particularly interesting, but it is important for women. So then in 1994, women could be ordained as priests and could take on the full responsibility within the Church of England. And that was what happened to me. And then astonishingly, and I still haven't quite got over it. I was the second woman in the country to be ordained as a bishop.
That's amazing.
In 2015. So my story, my sort of timeline has been always to be breaking that barrier.
Yeah.
Or like with our theme, breaking the bias, just being there at the beginning of things. Yeah. And when I talk to women now who are being ordained into the work of the church, that backstory is not their story.
Yeah.
You know, it's now, you know, they are now just living in a space where it's completely normal. What is there to be surprised about?
Yeah.
So that's been great. Absolutely amazing to be in that kind of,
yeah,
breaking the tape all the time, breaking the tape.
And I don't know if you'll see it like this, Alison, but I guess how wonderful for young women who are entering the work of the church to have you as the role model that you yourself actually didn't have when you started.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there are now a lot of women in that kind of public ministry as Christians, and indeed in other faiths, where now there are, as it were, older women who are in roles that make young women, and I've tried to prioritize working with young women and girls to say, listen, you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, you've just got to believe it and go for it, because you're not going to have to break through. There's already a path for you to walk on. And I think that's really important, really important.
I think, and I don't know how you find it, Alison, but there seems to be a real issue with young women about confidence and self-belief. And I personally blame a lot of that on kind of a lot of social media and expectation and the fact that it's just all the time, you know, images and, you know, what you should look like, and the weight of expectation must be huge on young women who've only ever known that. And I don't know if you find it kind of similar when you're speaking to young women.
I think that's exactly right, Chrissie, and it distresses me. Yeah. Because actually what I want, and it's not just for young women, it's for the young men and the boys as well, is how can we be comfy in our own skins and not be told who we are by social media or the images that are around or the ads or whatever. How can we grow in confidence sufficiently to be able to be ourselves? Because there's only ever going to be one of you, Chrissie, there's only ever going to be one of me in the entire history of humankind. And that's so for everybody who listens to this conversation. There's only one of you. So how can you be yourself, not squashed into somebody else's mold?
It's a huge question, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
But probably the most important one.
I think so. And in the end, from my perspective as a person of faith, I would say that is what God has made us to be. Made us unique, made us beautiful, made us to be beloved. And somehow we've got to find the way into that. And it's always, I think it's a struggle for all of us, frankly, but I do think that's the kind of the heart of the thing.
Which sort of brings me on to my next question in a roundabout way. It feels, or I feel, again, personally, the world feels like a very uncertain place at the moment for lots of different reasons. What advice, Alison, would you give for people who are kind of having that struggle at the moment, or feeling like they can't be themselves, or kind of weighed down with everything that's going on in the world?
I don't know that it's exactly advice, Chrissie. It's because we're all living in that context. Whatever we're making sense of, the world at the moment all around us is in a terrible state. really. I mean, so all I can offer is really how do I make sense of it, and sense of it in the communities of which I'm part. I think it's something, for me, it's something about making connection with each other.
Yeah.
Because when we're afraid, or there's all this free floating anxiety around, which there is in bucket loads at the moment, I think the danger is we isolate, we draw in on ourselves. So I think anything we can do to connect up with other people is really, really important. I mean, I'm in a very particular time in my own life because I'm retiring and moving on, but my life is transformed by people's kindness and generosity and, good words, if you see what I mean. And any of us can offer that to anybody.
Yeah.
Anytime, when you're just paying for your shopping or whatever, you can offer a kind word to the person who's taking your money. It's that kind of connecting up with each other, I think, is really crucial. For me, it's really important to connect up with the natural world. I'm very fortunate in the place where, I'm obviously, in the best sense, I'm a tenant, but I live where there are lots of trees, and actually, I know it sounds a bit wifty-woffy, but actually, for me to go out each morning and just have a walk round, just for 5 minutes, and breathe in and out and look at it and think, you've been here for a lot longer than I have. Yeah. And you will be here for a lot longer after I've gone. Yeah. That somehow helps me. And now it's spring, just listening, the birds are all getting going, and it's that just helps me. And wherever we live, actually, we can do that, even if it's just looking up to the sky. And I think the third thing I'd say, which you might expect me to say since I'm a bishop, but being a bishop's not the issue. I believe we are all made to connect up with the really deep, the really significant, what I would call spiritual. And for me, that is God, and I see God in the face of Jesus Christ. So for me, I have a practice of reflection and meditation, prayer. And that all sounds rather sort of, oh my goodness, I couldn't do that. But actually, it's only just small moments. It's small moments of stillness and quiet and seeking peace and listening with if I say with our inside ears, I don't know if that makes any sense, but not just to the sounds round about us, but to the deep things in our spirits. And I think that helps each of us to be a person of peace and a person of goodwill and a person who knows that life is more than the chaos that we see all around us at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think they're beautiful thoughts, and completely agree with you on the natural world as well. I mean, I'm really fortunate to live by the sea, and sometimes you just have to step away and walk and stand and look at the waves and kind of have that moment where you just feel overwhelmed, I think, a little bit by the kind of age of the earth and kind of, I suppose, our small part in it. It's quite an incredible kind of reflection, isn't it?
I think so.
Well, we've got a couple of questions left, Alison, but one thing I really, really wanted to ask you was about your work on mustard seed. So mustard seed is something that you oversaw the team, didn't you? And it's around worshipping communities for people who are living in places where life might be particularly tough. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, in our region, there are so many places where, exactly as you say, and that has been the phrase we've used, where life is incredibly tough.
Mm.
And we're looking at really complex pressures on people just to stay afloat.
Yeah.
And that can be as basic as where's the next meal coming from, frankly. But instead of going, for those of us who are not living in those places, instead of going, oh, that's so sad, actually to say, no, in these communities, there are people who've got real courage, real creativity, can make an enormous amount out of almost nothing. Mm. And so what the mustard seed work is about is to try and get alongside folks to give more confidence, going back to what we were saying before, Chrissie, to give more confidence that you can make a difference. You don't just have to be crushed by the stuff that's coming on top of you. You can make a difference, not only in yourself, but in your community. And mustard seed must seem a funny description of it, but that comes from a story that Jesus told. He was a great storyteller, and he told this story and just said, the mustard seed is the smallest seed you can possibly imagine. But when it's planted, it grows into a great tree, and the birds of the air can come and make their nests in it. And that's where we kind of got our inspiration from, was this story that Jesus told to say, we feel smaller than small and have got, feel as though we've got nothing to offer. But actually, in the way God sees the world, even the tiniest offering can turn into something amazing and something that offers hospitality. That's the birds of the air stuff. Chrissie, can I just show you this? I brought it. I brought it. Okay, so can you see that?
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Isn't that stunning? So this is a painting that was made for me for my retirement from the mustard seed team. And you can see here, there's the little mustard seed here and this tree. Sorry, the light's not very good, but the birds of the air coming in.
Oh,
so that will be hanging in my new home.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the colours. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. Yeah, painted by a wonderful woman called Hannah Maiden, young woman who's ordained in the Church of England. Yeah.
Are you seeing more and more women kind of coming and getting interest? I don't know the right way to phrase it, Alison, so I'm really sorry if I phrase it in a bit more good way, but kind of being ordained, getting involved with the work of the church. Are you seeing more women kind of coming to the church?
Yes, loads and loads, and encouragingly, I mean, there's great, because women of all ages and from all sorts of backgrounds are coming in to make a difference, like I said right at the beginning. But I find it very heartening that there are younger women, really feisty, gifted younger women, and that cheers me enormously, actually. It's great.
Yeah, it is great. I agree. Well, Alison, our time is nearly up, which I'm really sad about, because I could just talk to you for ages. It's been a really, really wonderful experience. Good luck with your move and good luck with your retirement. But I just wanted to ask you, kind of will you be carrying on working? Will you, what else have you got up your sleeves?
What's the next exciting episode? Okay, so Chrissie, I am only 65.
Oh, you're a spring chicken.
A spring chicken. So, but the great thing is, this is the right moment for me to retire. I know that. And what it feels like is just setting out an adventure. People keep saying to me, so what are you going to do? And all I can say is I'm going to move house and unpack and settle in, and then we'll see. And for me, just the way my personality works, that's the thing I love. It's the then we'll see. We don't have to have a plan or a plot. I've been asked to do all sorts of bits and bobs, and basically I've just said, no, listen, I'm going to move and I'm going to see what happens. And if you still want to ask me in 6 months or a year or whenever, then ask me then. But for the moment, it's that big open space to see what happens next.
That's really exciting. I'm a bit like you. I'm a big fan of the unknown.
Yeah.
Just sometimes like to let things happen. So
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And lovely to meet you, Chrissie. Thanks so much. You do this so beautifully. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Great. So we'll be cheering this week and breaking the bias and going for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alison.
All right. Thanks, Chrissie. Bye now.